I know we'll have some of our stragglers come in, but anyway, I'm finishing up that breakfast. But we're grateful to have Walt and Sarah here, and I want to go ahead and open in prayer, and then we'll give them the floor. Father, thank you again, just that you have provided us the opportunity and the resources to be able to support mission work, and both locally, but also various places around the world, and in various and unique ways. And grateful again for the mission of Extreme Response, and again, just the relationship that we as a church have established with Walt, and again, 10 of our folks that have been on a trip with him to the Philippines. We're just grateful again. And so, God, I pray that you'll just give us open ears and hearts to what Extreme Response is doing. And again, thank you for Walt and Sarah and Nate and their visit here with us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
So last time I was here, I came by myself. I couldn't bring my family, so this time I made sure that I brought my family. So it's not just Walt doing the presentation, it is Walt and Sarah. Whenever she's with me, I force her to come up and up front. And the honest truth is most people prefer her to me. But I don't really care. So, you know, they say to put your best foot forward. There's my best foot right over there. So anyway, we're very glad to be here.
Are you sure you're done now?
I am.
Okay. All right, my turn. Well, it's nice to meet all of you, if not by name yet. Yes, I'm married to that awesome one right there. Just want to share with you briefly that next month marks 7 years for Walt and I serving with Extreme Response International. So it's hard to believe it's already been 7 years.
So thinking about 7 years, I was trying to think about how to talk about 7 and our time there. And it got me to thinking biblically, of course. And I started thinking about the biblical sabbatical year. God had commanded the Israelites that every 7th year, they weren't to plant any crops at all. 6 years they planted, 7th year, nothing. And so if they needed food, they could go out and they could harvest stuff if they needed it. But his promise to them was that in the 6th year, they'd bring in enough that they wouldn't. And so then the priority in that 7th year was always the poor in the community, the foreigners in the community, and even the wild animals were prioritized as far as food goes. Now, that was just symbolic of what God was hoping to teach his people, though, through taking the 7th year off. He wanted them to understand that nothing really belonged to them and that nothing was really, truly the fruit of all their labors. Yeah, they worked. Yeah, you know, they did stuff like that, but it wasn't them who made all of that happen. It was the Lord who provided for them. And so even during that 7th year, they would do things like cancel debts. They would return property sometimes, especially when they'd get to year 50. And they would free slaves in the 7th year as well. So it was all about this time of really understanding that everything that we have comes to us from the hand of the Lord. And it was about a time of reflecting and being grateful and thankful and generous. As the Lord has so blessed us, you know, we want to in turn bless other people.
But unlike those ancient Israelites, our 7th year hasn't been one necessarily of rest. Nevertheless, we thought it would be an appropriate thing to look back on the 7 years that we've been serving with Extreme Response with and reflect with some gratitude. So much has happened, so much has changed, but none of it would be accomplished without the Lord working and moving and showing his favor.
Mm-hmm. So, did I forget a slide? Of course I did. So this was the slide that was supposed to go with what Sarah just said. So
unlike those ancient Israelites.
No, yeah. Anyway, I get so caught up in just talking that I forget about doing these things. Yeah.
I
know. I know. So now here's the next slide. So let us tell you a little bit about ourselves and about ER before we get into some of the stories. So the first thing that you should know is that, yeah, do you like that I put those in there? Sarah hasn't seen this PowerPoint presentation. I just put it together. So Sarah and I are college sweethearts. So we went from on the left when we were dating to middle being married, and then yeah, that's us still there. We're still together, and we look just like we did back in college, right? So we have been married actually 30 years, and we have 2 adult children. Our daughter Rachel is married to her husband Lewis. He's from Great Britain. They live in Ohio, I'm embarrassed to say. And then we also have our adult son Nate. If you haven't met him, he's sitting right next to Pastor Mike. Nate, why don't you stand up and turn around so that everybody can see you? He's our long-haired hippie of the family. And so that's, says the pudgy one. Yes, that's us. So that's a little bit about us personally.
One of the things that the Lord has given Walt and I is a shared heart for ministry, especially to those that are in great need. It began to kind of take shape when Walt was pastoring a church in Jackson, Michigan. We were involved in food pantries, clothing closets for the needy, and during the economic downturn, if you remember 07 to 09, in there I led a small program that was called Birthday Blessings, which we actually threw on a monthly birthday party for the kids that were in the homeless shelter there in the local Jackson area.
Can I tack on a little bit onto that too?
Tack away.
It was so cool because what Sarah organized at this homeless shelter is she had a connection with the director there, and so she'd find out all the kids who had a birthday in that month, and then get wish lists from those kids, and those kids would actually get gifts off the wish list. We wanted to be super generous, super loving with these kids who are living in obviously not a very comfortable situation. If you'd been in the homeless shelter, it was not like this warm and, homey kind of a place. It was definitely.
All the moms and kids are crammed into, double beds, and all the men in another section.
Yeah, so it was not a good place. So to bring some joy. You see the smile on a face there, and Sarah made sure that all the trimmings were there. So there were balloons and there were decorations and the tables were all covered with stuff. We always had pizza and we always had birthday cake and, games and things like that, so that even just for a few hours, they could feel like they'd escaped where they were at, and we could demonstrate the love of Jesus to them there. So it was a really, really cool program. So God's developing this heart in us for the least of these, and I think that's what led us to join Extreme Response International. We call it ER for short. So we're not talking about an emergency room up here, guys. We're talking about Extreme Response. So we were introduced to ER actually through the church where I was serving as pastor. We were supporting Jerry and Dawn Carnell. And Jerry and Dawn are the founders of Extreme Response. They're also actually from Michigan, the Metro Detroit area, and live in the Georgia area. So we met them, we found out about the ministry, we loved the things that Extreme Response was doing, and I think just over time we just felt very drawn to what it is that they were doing. ER's mission is to introduce people, oftentimes kids, but people to a relationship with Jesus by helping them to break out of the generational cycle of poverty. We do this in 2 ways. Education reinforcement, which is a way of helping kids stay in school as long as possible, because we know the longer they stay in school, the better chance they're going to have at being successful. And also vocational training, which is teaching adults skills that they can use either by securing a job or starting a small business. In fact, we know as far as education reinforcement is concerned, because of other big government entities have done studies, that for every year a child stays in school, that child's lifetime income will increase by 10%. So that's a significant amount for these kids. And when we're talking about dropouts, we're talking about kids dropping out of school in first grade or second grade. Many times they're coming from families where mom and dad are illiterate and they can't help their kids with any homework. So there's no homework support for them at all. So to have this kind of a space is important. Extreme Response has been around for 25 years, and they started, or actually we serve in 3 regions is what I want to talk about. We serve in Quito, Ecuador. That's where Extreme Response was actually founded. That's where they started. And the work started with people who were living and working in the Quito garbage dump at the time. So that isn't the case now, but when it first started about 25 years ago, people were actually living in the garbage dump, and that's how they made a living, by sorting and recycling. That we work with that group that they call themselves recyclers. We're also present in Cape Town, South Africa, where we work with 3 different townships, and we have our largest and most successful Dream Center program, which is our after-school program for kids. And then finally in Manila, Philippines, and that's where our longest running vocational training program has been going on there for a while. It's called Golden Hands, and it's a 42-week program where we take people who come in, predominantly women, but they've actually started to accept men, who come in, they know nothing about sewing. By the time they're finished, they're able to actually make ornate gowns, polo shirts, school uniforms, all these different kinds of things that they couldn't do before. We've got a couple of small samples back on our table of just different things that they make back there. But
Can I add on a little bit there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just at the very end of that 42 weeks, they have one major project that they're doing and building up to. And Walt referenced that they actually create their own gowns. They do a red carpet experience, and they get to walk in their product and show everybody what they've done. And the guys are making their outfit too. So it's the coolest thing to see that. So we always look forward to seeing the pictures. And if you sign up for our email, or if you're interested in the general ER email, they'll send those pictures out each year. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a tearjerker seeing, people who came in thinking that they couldn't do anything, and then the pride that they have as they're and I'm not talking about just like a sundress. I'm talking about ornate kinds of things with flowers and decorations, and I mean, it's really, really fancy and impressive. So very cool.
During our 7 years with ER, we've seen God do some incredible things for us, and through the ministry of ER. So I'd like to share one of those times that we saw God move on our personal behalf, starting way back when we were getting ready to move to Georgia. So we were living in Michigan at the time that we felt called into this ministry. And so obviously we're going to need to find out where we're going to be living in Georgia. So in 2018, if you remember the housing market then, especially in Atlanta, some of the bigger areas, the market was just nuts. Homes were selling so quickly that it made it impossible for us to actually be there to walk through a home. So we were literally looking at listings, the photos online for the listing itself. If we were lucky, and we were bidding on these houses, by the way, if we were lucky, we had a coworker that was already in Georgia that would walk the house, FaceTiming us to show us what it looked like. But that's all we had to go on, and being there selling so quickly, we just had to go ahead and make those bids that way. So it was very stressful.
Literally same day. List and sold, same day.
Yeah.
So, and we're trying to do it from Michigan.
Yeah. And of course, you had to bid 10,000 over whatever was being offered out there to even be considered. At the time, we thought that we wanted to move from our single-family little ranch in Jackson, Michigan, to a townhome. For many reasons, we thought community in a townhome area would be better. We thought we wouldn't have to worry about the lawn. We want to concentrate on missions. We don't want to be doing that kind of stuff. And we thought it would be more economical, so that's what we went for, and it was easier to find those as well in that market at the time. So we decided to go ahead and do that. We did actually secure one, thank the Lord, and we thought, okay, everything's all set. But no. So we pulled into Georgia the day before our closing. In Michigan, anyway, it's normal that you would do a walkthrough. That would be a scheduled thing. You'd walk through the home, make sure everything's okay. They didn't do that there. So we said, we need to go to the house. We need to see this. So our realtor's like, okay, and took us over to the townhome. We walk in, broken window, back door had been kicked in at some point. No grout in the kitchen backsplash. Glass and bugs all over the floor. Appliances were supposed to be new. It was new to the home, so they were older appliances. So it was. What do we do? The kitchen sink, I think, was the only working sink. The other sinks had issues with the plumbing underneath.
There was no plumbing underneath any of the sinks except
There
for
was
one.
something called plastic. It was. But then they also, hot and cold were wrong on one of the showers. It was just like, and we're not fixer-upper. Can you tell? We're not fixer-upper people.
I try.
So we thought, what do we do? We're in this situation. Do we back out? And so when we had the real estate agent pass along our issues to the seller, he's like, well then I'll just go on to someone else. I'm sure they'll bid more than you did anyway. So we just realized that we're just going to bite the bullet, go ahead and do it, and see how this all worked out. So it was already at the top of our price range. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot we could do. And we had a 10-year-old golden retriever with us, and we're like, what are we going to do for a dog?
And
all
all
stuff.
of our furniture and everything was going to show up
Yeah.
in 2 days.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound too much like a God story, but that's just the first part. And you can tell what's going to be coming, but that's a good thing. So about 3 years later, we realized townhome living was not it for us. There were a lot of reasons to that. But we decided that we needed to try and find our single-family detached home, our little ranch, all on one level. And so we weren't sure how we were going to go about doing that. Well, over the 3 years, the Lord put us in a property that the value went up 50% of our purchase price in those 3 years. A lot of people experience that, but we were fortunate enough to be in one of those. So that allowed us the appreciation, the equity to be able to go and then eventually find the home that we're currently in, which we love very much and are so grateful for. But just thinking back, how the Lord put us in this house that we were so disappointed and but yet it worked out to be such a benefit only 3 short years later. So that was fantastic. We're very grateful.
Yeah, and it's not perfect by, please don't pay too much attention to the landscaping, okay? It's a work in progress, but
Lack thereof.
it is definitely, we're just so happy to be like, you know what, mowing your yard for me is very cathartic. The work that we do isn't always like where you can tell that you've accomplished something. But when I finish mowing the lawn, it's done. And it looks nice, and I feel good about it, at least until the next time I have to mow it. So I didn't realize how much I needed that personally until I couldn't mow the lawn. And then I found myself really upset with the way the people who were mowing the grass were doing it, and it wasn't right, and it was a mess. So anyway, we're very blessed. Now, one of the ways that God has actually used us at ER actually happened really very early in our tenure there. Look at this lovely photo of my wife going through files. It's hard to find, when you work in the kind of the role that Sarah does, it's hard to find good action shots. So Sarah works as the donor accounting specialist for ER, which doesn't sound like it's that important, but it actually really is, because all of the money that comes into Extreme Response goes through her. So she makes sure that the money gets to all the right places it's supposed to go. Additionally, she works with all the donors. So most of our donors now have her personal cell phone number the minute they call or whatever. But she's built relationships with these people to help them as they're changing things, as maybe they need to cut back, maybe they want to increase, maybe they need to do a different thing. So many people have their credit card information stolen or whatever, you know, all those kinds of things. And so Sarah's there to deal with that. The other thing is for nonprofit organizations who collect money on the internet, every state in our country has a different rule or law for how that goes. So she handles all of our state registrations. And literally, it can be anything from just simply, yep, we're here, to she's got to send out this huge packet of information about who we are, what we do, all of our tax information.
State of Illinois.
Yeah.
Just some states are pickier and a little more old-fashioned.
So I get to hear a lot of the stories about which states are not very good. So Sarah's coming in, and well, we're both coming in, and we're both really green to the whole process. And so what happens is you start asking a lot of questions. She's learning how to process these donations and things like that. Okay, well, why do we do this? Why do we do that? When it's your 3-year-old doing that all the time, it can be quite annoying, right? Why? But it's super good in an organization sometimes to have a fresh set of eyes there to ask that question. And one of the things Sarah noticed is, first of all, we were mailing out all these receipts every month, hundreds and hundreds of receipts to people who had donated over that month. Well, at the time, it was 55 cents. Postage was 55 cents for a first-class letter. So we're paying that for every single one, every single month. By the way, guys, it's 78 cents now, if you didn't know that. And then Sarah noticed, hey, wait a second. We have most of the email addresses for the people who are donating to us. I wonder if they'd be open to letting us email them a receipt instead of mailing them a receipt. If we email it to them, it's essentially the cost of the internet for our company. That's it. And so they put together a thing that they put out to all the people and said, you know, hey, this is the cost savings that we can see if you'll allow us to email you the receipt. Overwhelmingly, people were like, yeah, absolutely, just send it by email. That has resulted in saving thousands of dollars. And all of that money now, instead of being put towards postage, is being put towards ministry. What a cool way for God to use Sarah. I mean, like literally in year 1 of her time there.
And Walt has been instrumental with the Dream Center programs. We've kind of touched base and seen some pictures from that already. But the Dream Center programs are there to provide a safe, loving environment for children that are very likely to drop out of school at any point, really. But the children enrolled in our Dream Center have the opportunity to receive homework helps, accountability, tutoring, nutritious meal, educational supplies and resources, and then even just time to be a kid and to play. Got the space to do that. So these kids may also have extra curricular things that they're able to do. They've gone on trips to the zoo, especially if you're at the South Africa one, and they've had lessons on how to make bracelets of different sorts. We've even got a gentleman two actually, who are excellent at sewing and are teaching sewing skills to the kids at different times. But everything's wrapped around introducing them to have a relationship with Jesus. So when the pandemic hit, so we're talking beginning of 2020, right? Walt and a team got together and created a Dream Center operations manual. So they had lots of time to do those Zoom calls that we all learned how to do at that point, and spent hours and hours and hours building in key ingredients for a successful Dream Center program. So once those conversations were done, Walt took all of that information together and put a document in place with guidelines and principles of what a Dream Center entails. So it provided kind of a blueprint of how to establish these Dream Centers. So in 2020, the operation manual is now complete. There are currently 2 Dream Centers, one in Quito, Ecuador, and one in South Africa in Cape Town. But by, let's see, when was that? Only a year later? No, today. Okay, so over the few years, but new Dream Centers began to get initiated immediately. So today we have 5 total Dream Centers. The additional 3 are with partner organizations that we have. 2 are in the Philippines, and then we have one that's in the northern part of South Africa now as well. And Walt's actually visited that one in the middle of nowhere and doing phenomenal things with the kids there. So very exciting. So that just means more kids are able to hear the gospel. It's wonderful.
Yeah, let me tell a little story too about, so the very top like red dot up there, way up in South Africa, literally, I mean, there's nothing around, nothing. There are homes, and there's nothing. There's no business. There's no in this village where it's located. There's not a restaurant. There's not a store. There's nothing. And so, as you can imagine, it's very impoverished. Typically what happens is once you become adult, you leave. You just go like to one of the major cities to try and get a job there. So Johannesburg or Pretoria or something like that, just trying to find income. Well, that was a dark place, kind of a hopeless place. Well, the Dream Center there has been running, I think, about 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years now. The Lord is changing those kids so incredibly at our Dream Center that they're now going to school and they're having a huge impact at the public school. The teachers are noticing that these kids don't act like the other kids. What's going on? And not only that, but they are influencing these other kids. The other kids are starting to look up to the Dream Center kids and go, I want to be like them. I want to act like them. I want to know what's going on with them. There is the test scores for this one school have shot through the roof, primarily because of our Dream Center there. And so what was incredible, they how they run the school, they have a school board there like they would here in the U.S. The school board approached the woman who is running our Dream Center program there. Her name is Prudence, and she's amazing. And they said, we would like you to take over the public school. She said no. She said no. And then last time I talked to her, we were laughing, and I said, have they asked you again? And she said, oh, they ask me almost every week to take over the school. I said, you're still saying no, right? And she said, yes, I do not want the whole school. But that's just a testimony to what the Lord is doing and how he's working through these really, really cool things. I'm going to take them back just really quick to just a few photos. I wanted to show you, here. So I know there's okay. So this one, no, it's not showing up. The photo on the left is the Philippines. So, and then the one up on the upper right is South Africa. And then the one on the lower right is Ecuador, working with kids there. And you see that it's pretty common for most of the kids to show up in uniforms. They wear school uniforms to school, which is kind of a cool thing. One other thing that I get to do, one of the blessings that I have is that I've been able to see God actually impacting people both who live overseas and people who live right here in the U.S. I've been blessed to be able to go with several teams to serve. And in fact, one of those teams I got to serve with was a group of people here from Molina Baptist Church. And so I got to be there and watch your church family members just dive in and do a VBS and love on kids and serve kids and just have this tremendous impact on this group of kids who came through. And let me tell you, it was not easy. It was hot. It was rainy. We were doing this thing like basically the whole day. I mean, I love the 9 to noon schedule, Lee, here. We were doing it like 9 to noon and then 1 to 4. And it was like, whoa. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's like drenched in their own sweat. I stunk. I can't say anybody else did, but I did. But I mean, the energy and the love and stuff like that. And in fact, I wanted to pass along a neat thing. I was back in the Philippines in January of this year. I was in that area where we held the VBS, and I was walking through the community, and a huge group of the kids who were at that VBS came running up to me. They remembered the VBS. They remembered the people there, and they wanted to have a photo with me and like that. So even though we were there, it feels like maybe a long time ago, that is still producing fruit. What was done, we were jungle jamming up a storm with those kids, and that is still producing fruit there. So I'm just so impressed, and I'm so thankful. And I've got a couple of other photos here of your team, like just pouring into people and coming alongside folks and having fun too. We did have fun while we were there too. So it was just an amazing time. And so I got to see your people impact those people. But then when we were done at the end of the day, every evening we'd take some time just to reflect on that day. And I got to hear the stories of what God was doing inside the people from Molina. And I'm not going to tell any of those stories because those are not my stories to tell. But again, what an amazing thing that God was doing that. So often we think that we're going to go over there and we're going to be the blessing, and so many times we're the ones who are the most blessed by going and serving, just being willing and open to being used by God. And I'm always really excited to process trips with people. There's another trip. Last year, I was in South Africa with some kids, some university students from the U.S., from a Christian university. They had gone to the Dream Center there to serve with those kids. And on the last day, we did this time of talking through that. I mean, the hair just stood up on the back of my neck listening to these college students who were saying, I can't believe that God can use me. It reminds me of your sermon today, Mike, because, we think that we're nothing special. Can we do that? Can God really use me? Yeah, he can. Yes, he can. Exactly what you said. When you're willing to put yourself in the hand of God, God can do such extraordinary things. So these college students are all like, we can't believe it. One of the girls there broke down crying. She said, while I was here, God revealed to me, I'm supposed to be a missionary. This is my calling. I mean, guys, it was incredible what the Lord does inside of people. And then even this year, the university sent another team over there. One of the students on that team was so impacted by what she saw happening and how she saw God using her that she actually said, I'm staying another week. She's like, you guys can go home. I'm staying here another week so that I can serve, because I can't believe what God is doing in me and in this place, and I want to continue to be a part of it. So it is such a privilege to get to be a part of those kinds of things. But you know what? It's not even just the people who go that we've seen this kind of stuff in. We have heard stories from people who have just been blessed because they gave. and they were faithful givers, and whether that's to ER, whether it's supporting us, whatever it is, and how God has blessed them. People who have been praying for us or for ER, and God has blessed them where they've seen the answers to the prayers that they've been praying and asking God for. We all have this kind of special role in being part of that, of helping to bring people to faith in Jesus and changing lives, and especially changing eternities.
Okay, Walt, one thing to kind of add with that Walt doesn't see as much as I do, but we do have short-term volunteers, is what we call them. But usually a lot of teenagers graduating, doing a gap year, for example, might do a 1 to 2 to 3 month stint. Usually it's been in South Africa. But even adults have done that. And I get to see fundraising that happens behind the scenes as they're prepping to go. And the messages from brand new people to our organization who come behind and support these individuals through that, and how excited they are to be a part of that person's team. I mean, a lot of times people get freaked out, a little scared to do the fundraising thing, and I don't want to do that. But it impacts that wider range, like you were talking about, Walt.
Yeah, we've been freaked out by doing the fundraising thing too. It's kind of, it's very humbling to go to somebody's house or to stand up front and, say, and would you prayerfully consider, supporting us, and in the back of my mind going, oh boy, what, and God's just been, faithful in that too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We've experienced, been used in and seen results of these stories and many more. What's undeniably true is that none of this would happen without you, without your prayers, without your support, without your love, your care. Not everyone is called to go to another country to serve, and not everyone's called to raise support, as we just mentioned about for missions ministry. But we all are invited to play a part in the work God is doing in the world as He relentlessly seeks and saves the lost and builds His kingdom. So the most important thing we want to say is thank you, Molina Baptist Church. Thank you so much for your faithful support, your participation in the work of ER and what we've been called to do. We're humbled, we're grateful. We look forward to our continued partnership with you and being the hands and feet of Christ to the least of these around the world.
So, how much time do we have left? None? 2 minutes. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them, whether it's about ER and our work or if it's a personal question about us. Again, we also have our table back there as well with just a few things about that. We would love it if you would sign up for our e-newsletter that comes out. We only send it out every 2 months, so we aren't filling your email inbox with a bunch of spam. We also keep it short. So pictures, lots of pictures, very little wording. It makes it easier. But we'd love for you to take some drink coasters, some stickers, take one of our response cards. But yes, thank you so much for being a part of our team and letting us be a part of your team.